Welcome back to Tipton Bros. Today, we'll be discussing the short-lived German Heinkel HE-162 Volksjäger. Now, let's get into it. This handsome fighter jet was the desperate product of the Emergency Fighter Program, an endeavor drafted by the Luftwaffe High Command in mid to late 1944. By this point in the war, Allied bombing raids had brought an already flailing Third Reich to its knees, with British and US aircraft flying largely unopposed over a crippled Germany. The Luftwaffe was a shell of its former self, lacking in all facets. Trained pilots, quality planes, and even the petrol to power them was a fever dream of the past. As an aside, by September 1944, strategic bombing of the German oil industry had reduced the production of petroleum, oil, and lubricants, or POL, by more than 90%. Apply a similar handicap to other vital resources, assembly, and infrastructure, and one could begin to see how bleak the situation truly was. That same month, the Reich Air Ministry issued specifications for the Volksjäger program to all capable domestic manufacturers for an emergency, lightweight fighter powered by a single BMW 3 engine. A lower thrust and less desirable power plant selected to not impede upon the limited quantity of Junkers Jumo 4 turbojets that in use by the Messerschmitt Me-262, among others. Of the required specifications, three main criteria are noteworthy. First, the design must be easily mass-produced, employing non-strategic materials, such as wood, while avoiding steel and aluminum. Likewise, the aircraft should be able to be assembled by non-skilled and slave labor at an optimistic rate of 1,000 units per month. Second, the jet should exceed the performance of current piston-driven aircraft. This lofty feat is reflected in the contract conditions. For example, a startlingly light maximum weight of 4,400 pounds, a top speed of 466 miles per hour, and a takeoff run of no more than 1,870 feet, necessary to depart from crewed airstrips. Lastly, and most absurdly, is the request that the design be simple to operate and handle. Reichsjugendführer Arthur Axmann of the Hitler Youth suggested that even student pilots should be able to fly the machine. On paper or in practice, the demand is laughable and a further demonstration of German radicalism and desperation. According to the National Air and Space Museum, the Nazis considered the Volksjäger squadrons to be the airborne equivalent of the Volkssturm, or People's Guard. Woefully undertrained and inexperienced men thrown into the gnashing teeth of an advancing superpower. Despite a seemingly unreasonable task, Heinkel jumped at the opportunity alongside its competitors, such as Blumenvoss. By late September, Heinkel's design was selected for production. The model featured the demanded single BMW 3 turbojet, which was mounted atop the midpoint of the fuselage, just aft of the cockpit. While this configuration established balance, it also forced a rework of the tail section. Concentrated superheated exhaust passed directly down the spine of the aircraft, making a conventional vertical stabilizer impossible. Heinkel engineers circumvented this problem, one of many, by opting for an H-pattern twin vertical stabilizer. In the same vein, the horizontal stabilizers are set at a 14-degree dihedral, giving it a distinct wide V shape. Gifted the moniker of Spatz, or Sparrow, the HE-162 had countless borrowed features, including an ejection seat derived from the HE-219 Night Fighter, oleo struts, hydraulic cylinders, and wheel brakes from the Messerschmitt Bf-109K, and a tricycle landing gear layout recycled from the HE-280. While the Sparrow was outwardly unique, it was, in reality, Frankenstein's monster. A fleshed-out concept emerged in November, under the guidance of engineers Siegfried Gunther and Karl Schwarzler. Heinkel received the contract from the ORLM on September 23rd, and had a prototype flying by December 6th, a mere 74 days. Defects and copied parts aside, the fact that the aviation firm crafted an operational fighter jet under dire circumstances in 2 months is nothing short of a miracle. Speaking of defects, the HE-162 Volksjäger was laden with them, the most propagated of which was an acidic adhesive. The manufacture of Tego film, a synthetic thermosetting resin that bonded with plywood to fabricate airframes, a mainstay of the late war Luftwaffe, was wiped out by RAF bombing. Compelled to find a stopgap substitute, a new and untested glue was thrust into service. Unbeknownst to the manufacturer, The impromptu adhesive was highly acidic, eating through the wooden components. Regardless, Heinkel test pilot Captain Gotthold Peter climbed into the cockpit for its maiden flight. The aircraft ascended to some 20,000 feet and reached an impressive 522 miles per hour. An undercarriage door broke away in air, and Peter noted that the HE-162 had a propensity to pull left. Beyond this, the Sparrow was well received, and another flight was scheduled 4 days later, to be held in Schwechat, outside Vienna, with high-ranking Luftwaffe officers and party officials in attendance. According to a Key Arrow article, following a successful display, Peter decided to finish with a low-level, high-speed pass over the airfield. During the flyby, the starboard wing's aileron broke away and the upper airframe delaminated, putting the aircraft into a roll. The HE-162 contacted the ground just outside the airfield boundary, killing pilot Gotthold Peter on impact. Heinkel shrugged off the loss and pressed on with development. Severe issues were mitigated, and others were left to fester as time constraints limited what could be addressed. The wings were reinforced and given extensions, known colloquially as lippish ears. These reduced the tendency to yaw left and roll. The initial armament of two 30mm Mark 108 cannons were deemed too heavy and replaced by a pair of 20mm MG 151-20 cannons, moving the ammunition capacity per gun from 50 to 120 rounds. These growing pains comprise roughly 10 pre-production aircraft, the A1 and A2 variant. HE-162A2 jets were first flown by the Test Command, or Erprobungskommando 162, out of Rechlin, with hopes of teaching glider and Hitler Youth pilots. This idea quickly crumbled, and aviators of the 1st and 2nd Gruppe Jagdgeschwader 1, abbreviated as JG1, were pulled from frontline service and converted from the Focke-Wulf 190A8 to the HE-162A2. Members of JG1 slowly trickled into the assembly sites at Schwechat, Maina, Bernburg, and Lech Air Base in late February of 1945. The Volksjäger was again of dubious quality, as roughly a dozen training mishaps occurred between March and April. Engine trouble, delamination, and canopy failures were commonplace and led to between 3 and 10 German casualties. The HE-162's combat history is contentious, with 3 supposed air victories I could find. April 19, 1945, Feldwebel Gunther Kircher specified to have shot down a Hawker Tempest. Kircher would be killed in action that same day. RAF records do not support his claim. Similarly, Unteroffizier Helmut Reichenbach of 2nd Gruppe JG1 alleged to have downed an Allied aircraft on April 26th, before dying in a crash shortly after. Finally, on May 4th, Lieutenant Rudolf Schmidt of 1st Gruppe JG1 claimed a kill on a Typhoon, which the RAF vehemently denied. If anyone could point me towards more concrete sources on the issue, it would be of tremendous help. Manufacture totaled 120 finished aircraft, with an additional 300 plus in various stages of assembly. The majority seemed to be of the A2 type, with a secondary quantity of the HE-162A1 and pre-production models. Singular prototype options were proposed, but most failed to materialize in any meaningful fashion. 7 complete examples exist today. I hope you've enjoyed today's brief overview of the German Heinkel HE-162 Volksjäger. We are a small channel, so a like is greatly appreciated, and recommendations are always welcome. Until next time on Tipton Bros.